I'm Sarah, 28F, and my life has been a series of challenges from the start. My parents, Jack, 50M, and Linda, 48F, split up when I was just 5 years old. Mom had been struggling with drug addiction for years, and it finally reached a point where she couldn't care for me anymore. The court decided Dad was the better option, so he got full custody. Growing up with Dad wasn't the improvement the court had hoped for. He worked as a construction worker, and the long hours and physical strain of the job seemed to fuel his anger. He'd come home exhausted and irritable, often reaching for a beer before even saying hello to me. As I got older, his drinking increased, and so did his temper. I learned quickly to make myself scarce when Dad was in a bad mood, which was most of the time. I'd spend hours in my room, trying to be as quiet as possible. If I made too much noise or got in his way, he'd yell at me, calling me useless and a burden. Sometimes, when he was really drunk, he'd get physical. He never hit me hard enough to leave visible marks, but the pushing, shoving, and occasional slaps were terrifying for a young girl. School became my refuge. I threw myself into my studies, joining every club and after-school activity I could. Anything to stay away from home as long as possible. I made a few close friends, but I never invited them over. I was too ashamed of Dad and afraid of what he might do or say. My paternal grandparents, Tom, 75M, and Anna, 73F, lived about an hour away. They'd visit occasionally, but Dad always managed to keep it together when they were around. He'd act like the perfect, doting father, and I was too scared to say anything different. When I was 14, everything changed. It was a Saturday, and Dad had been drinking heavily all day. I was in the kitchen, trying to quietly make myself a sandwich for dinner, when I accidentally dropped a plate. It shattered on the floor, and Dad came storming in. He was furious, yelling about how I couldn't do anything right. He grabbed my arm hard and raised his hand to hit me. That's when Tom and Anna walked in. They had decided to surprise us with a visit, and they had a key to the house. They saw everything. Tom immediately pulled Dad away from me, while Anna hugged me tightly. I broke down and told them everything, the years of verbal abuse, the drinking, the occasional physical violence. Tom and Anna were horrified. They immediately decided to take me home with them. Dad was too drunk to put up much of a fight, and honestly, he seemed relieved to be rid of me. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal proceedings, but in the end, Tom and Anna were granted custody of me. Moving in with my grandparents was like entering a whole new world. Their house was warm and inviting, always smelling of Anna's baking. Tom would help me with my homework, praising my efforts even when I struggled. For the first time in my life, I felt safe and loved. The transition wasn't easy, though. I had to change schools, leaving behind the few friends I had made. The new school was bigger and more challenging, and I struggled to fit in at first. But Tom and Anna were always there, encouraging me and supporting me through the tough times. As for Dad, he didn't fight the custody change. He'd visit occasionally, usually on holidays, but our interactions were always awkward and tense. He never apologized for his behavior, always acting like nothing had happened. As I got older, I saw him less and less. Mom would pop in and out of my life sporadically. She'd show up clean and full of promises, swearing she'd turned her life around. But it never lasted. She'd always end up asking for money or a place to stay when things fell apart with her latest boyfriend or job. It was hard, but I learned to keep my distance from her too. Despite the rocky start, I thrived under Tom and Anna's care. I graduated high school with honors and went on to college, studying psychology. I wanted to understand why people behaved the way they did, especially in families. Tom and Anna supported me every step of the way, helping with tuition and always being there to listen when I needed to talk. After college, I got a job as a counselor at a local youth center. It felt good to be able to help kids who were going through tough times, like I had. I rented a small apartment near work and started building my own life. Last year, tragedy struck. Tom fell ill with pneumonia, and his health declined rapidly. Anna, devastated by Tom's condition, had a stroke shortly after. They both passed away within months of each other. I was heartbroken. They had been more parents to me than my biological ones ever were. In their will, Tom and Anna left me their house and some savings. It wasn't a mansion, but it was a nice 3-bedroom house in a good neighborhood. I was overwhelmed by their generosity. After taking some time to grieve, I decided to move into the house. It felt right, like I was carrying on their legacy. A few months after I moved in, I got a surprising call from Dad. He said he was sorry for how he had treated me and wanted to reconnect. I was skeptical but agreed to meet him for coffee. To my surprise, he seemed different, sober and calmer. He introduced me to his new wife, Melissa, 35F, and their 2-year-old son, Ethan. Dad explained that he'd hit rock bottom a few years ago and finally decided to get help. He'd been in rehab, where he met Melissa. They'd both been clean for 3 years and were trying to build a new life together. I was cautiously optimistic. Part of me wanted to believe he had changed, while another part remembered all the broken promises of my childhood. We started having dinner together once a month. It was awkward at first, but it slowly got better. Dad seemed to be trying, often asking about my job and showing genuine interest in my life. Melissa was nice, always making an effort to include me in conversations. And Ethan was adorable. I enjoyed being a big sister, something I never thought I'd experience. Last week, Dad called me with some news. He'd lost his job due to company downsizing, and they were struggling to pay rent. He asked if they could move in with me temporarily, just until he found a new job. I was shocked and didn't know what to say. I told him I'd think about it. I spent the next few days mulling it over. On one hand, Dad seemed to have changed, and I felt a bit guilty about having this big house all to myself. On the other hand, the thought of living with him again, even a changed version, made me anxious. The memories of my childhood were still vivid, and I worried about falling back into old patterns. Moreover, I valued my independence and privacy. I had worked hard to build a peaceful life for myself, and the idea of disrupting that was unsettling. I also wondered about the impact on my job. As a youth counselor, I often brought work home with me, reviewing case files and preparing for sessions. Having a toddler in the house could make that difficult. There was also the issue of space. While the house had 3 bedrooms, one was my bedroom, another I had turned into a home office, and the third was a guest room that I used for storage. Accommodating Dad, Melissa, and Ethan would mean significant changes to my living situation. After much deliberation, I decided to call Dad and tell him no. I explained that while I appreciated our improved relationship, I wasn't comfortable living with him and his new family. I offered to help him look for a more affordable place or even lend him some money for rent, but I stood firm on not letting them move in. Dad didn't take it well. He got angry, saying I was selfish and ungrateful. He brought up all the times he'd sacrificed for me as a kid, conveniently forgetting all the abuse. Melissa got on the phone and called me heartless for not helping family. They both said I owed them for all the years Dad raised me alone, ignoring the fact that Tom and Anna had done most of the actual parenting. The conversation left me feeling confused and guilty. Tom and Anna had always taught me the importance of helping family, but they had also emphasized setting healthy boundaries. I couldn't help feeling like I was letting them down by not helping Dad, but the idea of him moving in made me incredibly anxious. I'm torn about what to do. Part of me wants to help, to be the bigger person and give Dad a second chance. But another part of me is screaming to protect myself, to not let him back into my safe space. I've worked so hard to overcome my past trauma and build a stable life for myself. Am I really obligated to risk all of that? So, Reddit, Ida for refusing to let my dad and his new family move into my inherited house? Should I stick to my decision or give them a chance? Update 1. Wow, I didn't expect my post to get so much attention. Thank you all for your support and advice. A lot has happened in the past 2 weeks, so I wanted to give you an update. After my initial post, I took some time to process everything. Many of you suggested I stick to my guns and maintain my boundaries, which I really appreciated. It helped me feel more confident in my decision. A few days after our phone call, I was at home after work, relaxing and watching TV, when I heard a car pull up outside. I looked out the window and saw Dad's car. He had Melissa and Ethan with him, and to my shock, they were unloading boxes and suitcases from the car. I went outside to confront them, asking what they were doing. Dad said they'd been evicted from their apartment and had nowhere else to go. He thought if he showed up with all their stuff, I'd have no choice but to let them stay. The audacity of it all made me angry. It was like I was a kid again, with Dad making decisions for me without any regard for my feelings. I stood my ground and refused to let them in. Dad got angry and started yelling, calling me selfish and ungrateful again. Melissa joined in, saying I was cruel for leaving a toddler homeless. Ethan started crying from all the commotion. Neighbors were starting to peek out of their windows, and I felt embarrassed and overwhelmed. Dad tried to push past me to get into the house, and that's when I snapped. I told him if he took one more step, I'd call the police. He scoffed, saying I wouldn't dare call the cops on my own father. So I did. I took out my phone and dialed 911 right there in front of them. When they heard me talking to the operator, they finally backed off and left, but not before Dad warned me I'd regret this. After they left, I sat on my front steps for a while, trying to calm down. I felt terrible, especially about Ethan. He didn't ask to be put in this situation. But I knew I'd made the right choice. I couldn't let Dad bulldoze over my boundaries like that. The next day, I got a call from my mom. I was surprised because we hadn't spoken in months. Apparently, Dad had contacted her and told her what happened, painting himself as the victim. Mom was furious with me, saying I should be ashamed for turning my back on family. She said she raised me better than that, which is rich, considering she was barely in my life. I tried to explain my side, but she wouldn't listen. In the end, I hung up on her mid-rant. Over the next week, I started getting messages from extended family and even some old friends. Dad had gone on a smear campaign, telling everyone how I'd left him and his family homeless. Most people took his side, calling me selfish and cruel. Only a few bothered to ask for my side of the story. One of my cousins, Emma, who I'd always been close to, called me in tears. She said she couldn't believe I'd do something so heartless. When I tried to explain about Dad's past abuse, she accused me of lying to make myself look better. It hurt to realize how easily people believed Dad's version of events. I was hurt and angry. I'd spent years trying to move past my childhood trauma, and now it felt like I was being victimized all over again. I decided I needed to fight back. I made a long post on Facebook, detailing Dad's abuse when I was a kid, how my grandparents had to rescue me, and how Dad had only recently come back into my life. I explained the situation with the house and how he tried to force his way in. I ended by saying I was done with toxic family members who only wanted me for what I could give them. The post caused a huge uproar. Some family members apologized for jumping to conclusions. My Aunt Karen, Dad's sister, reached out to say she believed me because she had experienced similar treatment from him when they were young. Others doubled down, saying I should forgive Dad and let the past go. A few even accused me of lying about the abuse, saying I was just trying to get attention. The whole situation was affecting my work. I found it hard to concentrate on my clients' problems when my own life felt like it was falling apart. My boss noticed and suggested I take a few days off to sort things out. I was grateful for her understanding. In the midst of all this drama, I got a surprising message from Melissa. She apologized for her part in the situation and admitted she didn't know the full history between Dad and me. She said they were staying with her sister for now, and she was thinking of leaving Dad because he'd started drinking again. I felt bad for Melissa and Ethan, but I knew it wasn't my responsibility to fix their situation. I told Melissa I appreciated her apology and wished her well, but I needed to maintain my distance from all of them for my own mental health. A few days later, I ran into my neighbor, Mrs. Johnson, while getting my mail. She's an elderly lady who's lived on the street for decades and was good friends with Tom and Anna. She told me she'd seen what happened with Dad and wanted me to know she was proud of me for standing my ground. She said Tom and Anna would have supported my decision to protect myself. Her words meant a lot to me and helped ease some of the guilt I'd been feeling. This whole situation has been emotionally draining. I'm thinking of talking to a therapist to help me process everything. For now, I'm focusing on self-care and surrounding myself with supportive friends. I've also decided to go low contact with most of my family for a while. I'm still struggling with feelings of guilt and doubt, wondering if I did the right thing. But I'm trying to remind myself that it's okay to prioritize my own well-being. I can't set myself on fire to keep others warm, especially when those others have hurt me in the past. I'll update again if anything significant happens. Thank you all again for your support and advice. It's been a huge help during this difficult time. Update 2. Hello everyone. It's been a while since my last update, and a lot has changed. I appreciate all the support and advice I've received from this community. Here's what's been happening. About a month after my last update, I received a call from the local police department. They informed me that my dad had been arrested for drunk driving. He had Ethan in the car with him at the time. Thankfully, no one was hurt, but it was a close call. Melissa had left him a few weeks prior, but he had visitation rights with Ethan. I was shocked and angry, but also felt a strange sense of vindication. This incident proved that I was right not to let them move in with me. I can't imagine how stressful and potentially dangerous it would have been to have Dad living in my house, especially if he was drinking again. The police asked if I could take Ethan temporarily while they sorted things out with Child Protective Services. Despite my complicated feelings about the situation, I couldn't leave my little brother in foster care. So, I agreed to take him for a few days. Those few days turned into weeks. Melissa was struggling to find stable housing and work, and with Dad in jail awaiting trial, I became Ethan's primary caregiver. It was challenging, to say the least. I had to take time off work, rearrange my house to make it toddler-friendly, and quickly learn the ins and outs of caring for a 2-year-old. Ethan was understandably confused and upset at first. He'd cry for his mom and dad, and I felt helpless. But slowly, we started to bond. I found myself enjoying our time together, reading him stories, playing games, and watching him learn new things every day. During this time, I also learned some disturbing information about Dad. Melissa reached out to me and revealed that Dad had been lying about his sobriety. He'd been drinking on and off for the past year, hiding it from everyone. She also told me that he'd been pressuring her to have another baby, even though they were struggling financially. It made me realize how little Dad had actually changed. Melissa's revelation brought up a lot of old memories and feelings. I remembered how Dad used to hide bottles of alcohol around the house when I was a kid, how he'd lie to Tom and Anna about his drinking. It was like history was repeating itself, only now there was another innocent child involved. As for Mom, she showed up at my door one day, saying she'd heard about the situation and wanted to help. I was skeptical, but she seemed sincere. She explained that she'd been clean for 2 years and was trying to make amends. I let her visit with Ethan a few times, always supervised. It was strange seeing her in a grandmother role, but she was good with him. Her presence brought up mixed feelings. Part of me was glad to see her doing better, but another part remained wary, remembering all the broken promises of the past. Last week, there was a custody hearing for Ethan. Melissa asked if I would consider becoming Ethan's legal guardian, at least temporarily. She said she needed time to get back on her feet, and she trusted me more than anyone else to take care of him. It was a huge decision, but after much thought, I agreed. I couldn't bear the thought of Ethan going into the foster care system. The judge granted me temporary guardianship of Ethan. Dad, who attended the hearing, was furious. He accused me of trying to steal his son and turn him against him. The judge shut him down quickly, pointing out that his recent actions showed he wasn't fit to care for a child right now. Seeing Dad in the courtroom, looking disheveled and angry, was a stark reminder of my childhood. It reinforced my decision to keep Ethan safe from that kind of environment. So now, I'm suddenly a guardian to a 2-year-old. It's not how I imagined my life would go, but I'm determined to give Ethan the stable, loving home he deserves. I've turned the spare bedroom into a room for him, and we're slowly settling into a routine. It's been an adjustment, balancing work and childcare, but my boss has been understanding, allowing me to work flexible hours. I'm still processing everything that's happened. I feel angry at Dad for putting Ethan in danger, sad for the childhood I never had, and overwhelmed by my new responsibilities. But I also feel stronger than ever. I'm breaking the cycle of abuse and addiction that's plagued my family for generations. I'm not sure what the future holds, but I'm taking it one day at a time. Thank you all for your support throughout this journey. Your advice and encouragement have meant more than you know. Update 3. Hello again, everyone. It's been 6 months since my last update, and I wanted to share how things have progressed. Ethan has been living with me full-time for 9 months now, and I'm amazed at how much he's grown. He's talking more, learning new things every day, and his personality is really shining through. It hasn't been easy adjusting to life as a guardian, but it's been incredibly rewarding. I've child-proofed the house, learned to balance work and childcare, and even joined a support group for kinship caregivers. The support group has been a lifeline. It's comforting to talk to others who understand the unique challenges of raising a family member's child. We share advice, frustrations, and small victories. It's helped me feel less alone in this journey. As for the rest of my family, things have been complicated. Dad was sentenced to 18 months in prison for the DUI and child endangerment charges. He's required to complete an alcohol treatment program as part of his sentence. He sent a few letters, mostly blaming everyone else for his situation. I haven't responded. Reading his letters brings back painful memories, and I've decided it's best for my mental health to maintain distance for now. Melissa has been making progress. She's found a steady job and is in therapy. She visits Ethan regularly, and we're working on a co-parenting arrangement for when she's ready to have him back full-time. It's not always smooth, but we're both trying to put Ethan's needs first. We've had some disagreements about parenting styles, but we're learning to communicate better. Mom has been surprisingly consistent in her visits. She's still clean and has been a big help with Ethan. We're slowly rebuilding our relationship, but I'm keeping my guard up. I've made it clear that any slip back into old habits means she loses access to both of us. It's strange to see her as a responsible adult after all these years, but I'm cautiously optimistic. The most unexpected development has been my relationship with my paternal aunt, Karen. She reached out after hearing about the situation from other family members. Unlike the others, she believed me about Dad's abuse because she had experienced similar treatment from him when they were young. She's become a great support system for me and a loving great aunt to Ethan. Her understanding and validation of my experiences have been healing in ways I didn't expect. Last month, I decided to start therapy myself. It's been helpful in processing my childhood trauma and navigating my new role as Ethan's guardian. I'm learning to set healthier boundaries and prioritize my own well-being alongside Ethan's. My therapist has been helping me work through the complex emotions surrounding my family relationships and my new responsibilities. I've also been thinking a lot about Tom and Anna, my grandparents. I wish they could see me now, See how I'm using the home they left me to provide a safe haven for Ethan. I think they'd be proud. Their love and support gave me the strength to break the cycle of abuse in my family, and now I'm passing that on to Ethan. I've been telling Ethan stories about them, showing him pictures, trying to keep their memory alive. I'm glad I stood my ground when Dad tried to move in. If I hadn't, who knows what might have happened to Ethan. It wasn't an easy decision, but it was the right one. I've learned that sometimes being family means making tough choices to protect the vulnerable. I'm taking it day by day. Melissa's progress gives me hope that Ethan might be able to return to her care eventually. If that happens, I'll make sure to stay involved in his life. If not, I'm prepared to continue raising him. Either way, I'm committed to giving him the stable, loving childhood I never had.